Okay, I think so. Shift the question slightly. Observability. So, going back to infrastructure itself and how we look at what should be replaced, what we can reuse, how we can reconfigure. A lot of that is based on being able to see what we have, how it's being used, its performance, and so on. So, how do you approach monitoring and managing multiple programs, multiple elements of infrastructure to ensure you've got that common observability of everything that's happening across your network?
I suppose you just designed the whole thing to have been that in the first place, because doing it afterwards is far more difficult. If you've got lots of disparate platforms and you now need a single place to look at all that's doing, it's extremely complex, therefore expensive. So I suppose it's, again, an analysis of, do you start from scratch or from a design process approach, or do you try and join all that up in a sensible fashion?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Andy. I think when we talk about secure by design, that's one of those key areas, isn't it? Because in a legacy estate, in a brownfield estate, and the customer goes, I've got these 6 different monitoring platforms. You kind of go, and they go, and I want you to integrate them. And you go, woo. And it's kind of like, we're much better off to just start over, because you're going to have so many little nooks and crannies and blind spots and everything else, because the design for that single pane of glass wasn't there. And I think the other thing that a lot of organizations forget is one of the core concepts of observability, and that, back to what Adam said earlier, the whole defense in depth, right? Where do we get the concept of defense in depth? It's from castles, right? Because we went from that little hill fort with some pointy sticks to, the late stage castles in medieval Europe were impenetrable, to the point that the bad guys used to resort to trying to starve them out, because there was no army that was ever going to take that castle. So that defense in depth model, one of the things that made it work so well is that the observability wasn't in the castle. It was a completely separate watchtower sitting up on a hill over there. Why? Because the guys in the castle always had blind spots. They would get distracted talking to their mates at the guardhouse or whatever else, but you didn't have observability unless you were an independent observer, not involved in the day-to-day going-ons in the castle. And it was that guy up there who was looking on the other side of the hill, lighting a fire and going, hey, pay attention, castle guys, bad stuff is coming. That model has kind of gotten lost in this, and we have this pendulum in IT, don't we, of like in-source, outsource, in-source, outsource. Right now we're sort of swinging towards the outsource side. Everybody's buying cloud and as a service. Give us another 18 months, it's going to start going the other way, and everybody's going to be insourcing everything. And you're going, that pendulum misses the point, because certain things can be delivered very efficiently internally. Certain things should not be delivered internally. And I think observability is probably one of those key things that you almost require a service provider of some sort who's not involved in running your infrastructure to watch your infrastructure. Shameless sales plug for 923 here. I mean, I think that's a foundational part of what you guys deliver as value to the marketplace, is being that independent set of eyes that goes, that thing that just happened over there, that's a bit odd. Why did that happen? And then you start pulling on those threads, don't you? And what do you find? Oh, well, that was a kludge that was done to keep something working. All right. Was it documented? No, it wasn't. Okay, well, let's write it down, because otherwise you're creating tech debt. Let's do some after action analysis, and let's help you figure out whether that kludge should become part of the standard operating model, or whether there's actually a project there to undo that at some point before that tech debt becomes particularly expensive. Let's find out how that impacts on the wider organization. And all of these things kind of come back to the theme of today, right? The old versus new, to go, actually, it doesn't matter, because a brand new piece of technology is just as likely to have poor observability as a really, really old piece of technology. Because it's almost like Adam's inverse bell curve, isn't it? The stuff that is in its sweet spot operationally is probably pretty well monitored. The brand new stuff isn't. They never even added it to monitoring. And the legacy stuff isn't, because nobody knows it's there. So having that external pair of eyes, having that watchtower up on the hill, it's not about coming down and beating your guys with a stick. It's about helping them to see the things that they can't see because they're busy running the castle.
I think that's a...
Sorry. No, go on. Carry on.
I was going to say, there was a really common thing I saw during actually the kind of move towards kind of cloud first and cloud centricity in people's kind of hosting strategy. Certainly, I was around. So a very typical scenario, kind of I encountered, and what kind of was subject to was people going, we profiled what the costs of operating this kind of in the cloud would be, and then we got the bill, and the bill is based on telemetry and observability. And they're like, why is that so much higher? And typically for those estates is that observability and telemetry within those legacy environments was relatively limited. And what you normally find is that people were pretty confident on their compute costs and very confident in their storage because they just got a report out of the actual storage. And then when it came down to network usage, how much is that chatting? What systems is it chatting to? How much does it pull down as part of the user sessions? That's not really how they monitored it. There was capacity on the core network. There was capacity on the kind of circuits out to offices and a few other bits around utilization. But in terms of were your applications fingerprinted, so could you actually go, that service generates this traffic and that's what it looks like? That was typically far more limited. And so what you actually find is you had a huge cost and operational efficiency variable that you weren't actually monitoring because it wasn't applicable in your operating environment. You then shifted that consumption paradigm and suddenly knew exactly what they were doing. And occasionally it was quite unpleasant news. And it was also a fundamental thing you just couldn't change because it's about changing the nature of the services. So again, driving that observability into understand what you're using, how you're using it. I've said it from a security point of view, trying to just understand like applications that have lots of different data within them. When is the sensitive data moving or being accessed versus when is the data that frankly you could publish on the internet nobody would care moving, and they're all in the same system? Is that you go, most of them don't have insight into that. You might see some packet shaping, you might see some kind of traffic prioritization within it, but that's around effective utilization of the kind of pipes you have, rather than going, I'm looking to understand that and control what goes where and how it behaves. So again, kind of driving observability into those environments fundamentally can inform your investment strategy, but also can unlock all sorts of operational and security efficiencies from just going, do you actually know what it's doing? And actually, I think there's a really interesting point that comes out from that security concept, which is, so the fact that it's been doing that for months, does that mean that's what it should be doing? Or is that just, it's been doing a horrible thing for the whole time, so now it's just normal, which is not the same as desirable? And can you understand the difference?
Yeah, and to our point earlier, Adam, what a fantastic application for AI and ML, because the volumes of data that need to be processed are so significant for a large organization. You know, you'd need an entire department of people reviewing packet tracing logs on a daily basis to have any clue what was going on. That's exactly the type of application we can stick AI on and go, what's actually going on? Crunch all that data, do it in real time, and put it on a dashboard for me. These are capabilities we didn't have a few years ago, and I think that's going to be really transformative to helping connected organizations be a lot more secure. Is investing in some of that kind of stuff from the point of view of observability.
I think there's also the other lens to this. So we kind of talked about security and we talked about other aspects of observability. The other part that you kind of layer on top of that is the kind of user experience, right? And so if you think back to days gone by, looking at SolarWinds, is it up? Yes, it's green. Nowadays, up isn't always good. So what actually is going on for that user using that application to do what job, role, task within their business? So I think I think there's some statistics out there that says every enterprise has a minimum of 7 different monitoring platforms. So when the CEO rings up and says, I can't get access to the application, my team's called are terrible, it's like asking the the help desk guy to chop down a forest with a spoon, because he's like, well, where do I start? What do I do? So I think there's a user experience, and you kind of then move that to OLA. So what does operationally good? How does that map to the business operation? How does that map to the value creation? And you are using that as a lens to monitor your infrastructure and what people are doing. Granted that, you know, from a security perspective as well, but actually from that UX point of view, that's really, really important. So back to your point, Andy, can I do that given I've got 7 applications? To Stephen's point, yes, because I can just take that data out, give it AI and say, build me a dashboard that says there's these 12 OLAs across these 5 departments, show me how they're doing.
Yeah,
And-
and I've seen it quite a lot where people are just aiming for that single pane of glass to join everything up and make everything really complicated. But the reason that they want that single pane of glass is just because, well, there's one person who would like to be able to see that, whereas everyone else was quite happy. We've got 3 things, we monitor them, all the monitors on my desk, I look at them, it's good to go. But when you plug them all together, the whole thing breaks.
It's subjective, isn't it? So you kind of go to the network guy, is everything up? Let me check. Yeah, it's all good. Right. To my IT systems guy, is everything good? Yeah, everything's good. Yeah. To my contact center guys, is everything up? Yeah, it's all good. Well, why is everything turning to rat? Yeah, we don't know, because there's something going on between all of those systems that's not working right. Look at the air traffic control situation that happened. Yeah, all that big outage was down to observability, because they couldn't see what was happening with the data.
And I think, you know, on the topic of the day, right? Old versus new. An investment in observability is going to give you the data to understand where you should invest. So that's one of those key things that I think organizations are lacking nowadays, because you will get, you know, oh, well, that network link is overutilized, I must need to go buy another one. But do you? What's it doing? Should it be that utilized? Is that desirable, right? Is that correct? And once you start unpicking it, you get into the observability side of things, and you go, oh, well, actually, no, that's just a service sitting behind that network link that's been misconfigured. There we go, I fixed it. Oh, look, I've got loads of bandwidth. And without the observability, how do you make those decisions? You know, we're making those decisions based on this kind of narrow field of view. And that's, again, where organizations are getting that, you know, is it old but good, or is it old and needs to come out? If you don't have facts and evidence, how do you know?